Hey there, Lifter Uppers. I'm Deb Krier, the co-host of Cancer and Comedy, where our mission is to heal cancer-impacted people through hope and humor, something we like to call turning the grim into a grin. Well, today on Cancer and Comedy, we're going to be talking about goal setting and cancer. We are at the first of the new year when many people are setting their goals for the year. So Dr. Brad and I are going to talk today about creating space in your life while living with cancer, in part by setting goals as a way to live a balanced life. Now, here's the host of Cancer and Comedy, Dr. Brad Miller.
Hey, Deb, great to be with you here on this as we embark on a new year of 2025 and have some great conversations together here on the Cancer and Comedy podcast. And we really are looking to continue our process of developing a community of people who care for one another and help one another cope with hope here on our podcast. And we are all about helping people to turn the grim of cancer into the grin of a fulfilled life. And that's going to be part of what our conversation today is about. And we just hope people will get connected to us at our website, which is cancerandcomedy.com, and go to cancercomedy.com/follow to be a part of the community. Well, Deb, let's start things off with a couple of bad dad jokes. What do you say?
I'm ready.
What did one DNA strand say to the other DNA strand?
I don't know.
Do these jeans make my butt look big? Well, hey, one more here. Why aren't dogs good dancers?
I don't know.
They have two left feet.
Of course.
There you go.
Well, folks, following our conversation, because we do like to leave everyone with a grin, we will have another one of Dr. Brad's bad jokes of the day. But of course, we will also have our very important Faith It or Break It segment. Well, as we mentioned, we would love for you to be a part of our Cancer and Comedy community, where together we crush cancer with a message of how to cope with hope and humor. Please follow Cancer and Comedy at cancerandcomedy.com/follow.
Well, Deb, it's right here. We're recording this right at the very first of the new year of 2025, and that's a common time when people set whatever you want to call them, goals, New Year's resolutions, things of that nature, or kind of recalibrate your life, things like that. And they might be regarding health. And some people health, it's regarding to lose 5 pounds. Or it might be financially. I want to, get a raise at work, or I want to get a certain, pay off certain debt or something like this. Or it may be a family-related thing. I want to go on a vacation, or I want to spend more time with the family. Any number of things that people have. When you have cancer, boy, that kind of throws everything off into a whole new different light, doesn't it?
It does.
Your perspective changes when you get that phone call that you have cancer. And, I know that, for instance, when people set goals at the new year, one of the things that happens oftentimes is people neglect their goals or they go away. In fact, there's even a certain day, I think it's around January 15th or something, they correct the
those resolutions just never last.
The resolution poof day, or the days when those go away, or whatever it is. But cancer is something that doesn't go away, does it? It's even if you have a successful outcome with a surgery or something like that, it's still there in your mind. So tell me, are you a goal-setting person? Are you a resolution person, this type of thing? And tell me how that works for you kind of personally, and then how maybe a cancer diagnosis may have throw a wrench in that.
Right. Well, I never really did resolutions because I would do the, poof day. And, so I finally gave up on those. I've certainly set business goals for many years. But it's been interesting because I do set goals and some of them are obviously business related, but there's also the personal ones. Let's take another vacation. I told my husband, I said, now that he's retired, I said, I want us to go out and do something once a week, whether it's eat at a restaurant. I said, shopping at Walmart does not count. And so we have to go out and do something so that we don't become hermits, right? And so that's kind of one of the goals that I have set is we go out and we do something I have, goals to see more friends, things like that. But it's kind of funny. Long-term goals are a little more elusive, maybe is the way to put it, when you're dealing with cancer.
Yes.
Because you're not quite sure what you've got, but I know you've got some really good long-term goals, particularly pertaining to your family.
Yeah, well, I really think about this time of year. I was diagnosed with prostate cancer just a couple days after Christmas, a couple years
Right.
ago. And so and I remember very clearly around the first of the year, well, it would have been the first of the year of 2023, so 2 years ago, when I was in a kind of a bad state. I was kind of, because the cancer diagnosis had really thrown off a lot of my goals and plans. That is,
Right.
I had retired, and my goals and plans revolved around travel and new adventures and reconnecting with family and some health related goals, but they're more about getting in shape, and this kind of thing rather than dealing with cancer. And it really threw me off. And I was kind of in a place of kind of some fog a bit
Right.
around this time of year 2 years ago. And it took a time when I got together with my two granddaughters, I think is what we're talking about here. When we got together, and I could just we took them out for a Christmas time outing, and where we did the Happy Meals at McDonald's and did bowling and some things like that. Had some fun together, and they were giggling and laughing. And they were 5 and 3 at the time, and giggling and laughing. And they had no cares in the world. But I just had this vision of really wanting to see them as young women at ages like maybe 20 and 18, and going through graduating high school, whatever it would be. So that gave me a little clarity over the next few weeks about that I had some things I needed to do goal wise in terms of my cancer. And they also led me to kind of think about kind of how I wanted to live my life, kind of with different sorts of intentions that, with different sorts of directions and intentions that maybe I'd had before. And I think cancer makes us kind of reevaluate, recalibrate things. And so tell me, when, you said you had business goals and things like that, did cancer throw a wrench and all that kind of stuff for you, or how'd that work out for you?
It did. And it was interesting because I belonged to a wonderful mastermind group of 5 women, and we were talking about long-term business goals. And this was, late last year, and talking about 10 years, 20 years in the future. And I realized, we have no idea what the future holds, right?
Right.
I could easily, do 10, 20 years. I could also get hit by a bus tomorrow. But but I did tell him, I said, it is hard for me to plan 10 years into the future. Sometimes I'm just happy to get through the day,
Right.
and things like that. And so, their reaction, what was so interesting, because they saw the fact that I had trouble planning that far into the future as a negative, that I was
Interesting.
manifesting not making it. And, and I thought about that for a while, and I told them later, because they realized that they had upset me. And I said, thank God that none of you have to deal with this. I said, but when you do have something like this to deal with, it is harder to plan long term. And hopefully I'm not manifesting that I won't make it to 10 years, but it does, it kind of brings different challenges. It's not the why bother thought process, but it is kind of a little bit, but at the same point, I think we all should be planning for many, many years in the future, and then maybe have backup plans. Like I said, sometimes my goal is let's get through the day.
I think it's interesting that the people in your mastermind, I assume that they hadn't had dealt with a profound cancer
Right.
situations or other health situations that you had, and then that they were kind of for lack of a better term, kind of a deal with it or get over it kind of an attitude.
Well,
Is that fair at all? I don't know if it is or
well,
not, but
and I'll be honest, they're some of my biggest cheerleaders.
absolutely.
And
Oh,
so
I didn't think
and I think maybe, that was it. Was they were they were wanting to really make me, as cheerleaders, no, you have to plan for 10 years and 20 years in the future. And it was like, maybe.
Well, I just think there's some nuances to encouragement. And, encouragement, I think we all are called and need to be encouragers. And certainly I think that's a part of what our role and purpose here at Cancer and Comedy is all about, is to try to encourage people, to help them, see things with a cheerful heart is good medicine, is what we like to say, and to see things with that kind of a uplifting attitude. And that's a good thing. But the reality is that the cancer is kind of like that thing that kind of looms over us. It's kind of a cloud that's over us.
Elephant, that shadow, that whatever.
Right. That's there, that we have to come to terms with. And I think that's where I'd like to go with our conversation for a few minutes here, Deb, is this: how can we use kind of a goal-setting mindset or a kind of a futuristic mindset to help us come to terms with it? And I like to think of in terms of, instead of goals like, within 90 days, I'm going to get through, there's one set of goals. Like if you have a 90-day series of treatments, they're going through, a chemo treatment every other week for 90 days. That's one thing to kind of tick off those days, those treatments, and I know you've had to do some of that, where you've had to go through certain levels of treatments. There, you can tick those off. But there's another way of kind of setting your kind of direction or your intention of how you do that. And I think that's one of the ways I've tried to see things a little bit differently, rather than trying to get through things to the next milestone, to kind of set direction, intention of how I do it and why I do it. So it has to do a little bit of attitude, a little bit of the attitude of gratitude we've talked about. That might be my goal now, maybe more, not just to get to the, I have 6 months I go in for a checkup every 6 months or so, to get through the next checkup and not be overwhelmed with anxiety, but to have, be thankful and be grateful for where I'm at as well. Right. And so I think that's kind of what I heard somebody say in some presentation we looked at about living over cancer, instead of kind of living, with cancer, kind of embroiled in it. It's kind of hard. I don't know. You tell me, is what I'm sharing make any sense to you, or maybe helpful to our lifter uppers to?
Yeah, and I think it does. It's obviously a challenge. But when we are really thinking about goals, we are thinking obviously about the future. And
Yes.
Again, maybe it's a week, maybe it's years from now. And I know a lot of what happens is it does give you something to live for. I remember when my grandmother was very ill. She, one of my cousins was having a difficult pregnancy. And so my grandmother's goal was to see that baby be born. And, and she was going to do whatever it took to get to the point where she was able to hold that baby. And she did. But yeah, I think that's the thing that we need to keep in mind is goals should be positive. And whether it's you're going to stop smoking, you're going to lose 50 pounds, or, whatever it is, you're going toward a positive outcome. So you need to do a bit of a mind shift, like you were saying, to think, okay, what do I need to do to make sure that happens? Whether it's, I'm going to change and have a daily gratitude, or, eat better, make it through your treatments. I think it is that mindset of, I'm not going to let this defeat me.
Yeah. I think it may be an opportunity for us to revisit passions of our life, or to see again what is important to us. Meaning, maybe you get so caught up in the goal setting, what the other things we talked about, whether it's, getting the raise at work, or losing the 5 pounds or whatever. We get so caught up in the grind of that, or the mind, we forget some of the things we are passionate about. Maybe it's music or a hobby or something like that. Just, I used to, a long time ago, I was an old rock and roll DJ, and I started getting revisiting some of the songs I used to play on the radio. Just kind of nostalgic music. They'll always say. I've always been into that, but just recently I've been listening to that more and more, and I just enjoy it. I just heard heard the hits of 1978 the other day, and well, that brought me back along to the back in the era when I was playing music and things like that. But my point is to maybe this can kind of cancer. I think what we want to say here, I think a part of our goal setting or process here is to help us to cope with cancer in such a way that, yes, it's there, but let's
Right.
try to find a way to make space for other stuff in our life,
Yes.
not to be
Right.
consumed by it. And I think goal setting and prioritizing and setting different intentions and directions maybe can help us to do that, especially if we do it intentionally.
Right.
You think does this make any sense to you? And maybe there are some things in your life, maybe
It does.
you've intentionally said, I'm going to do something besides dwell on poor me. I got to go through cancer treatment or whatever it is.
Yeah. I think it's always good to be focusing on the positive. And it is hard, when, especially if we're dealing, in the throes of, say, treatment or surgeries or things like that. But what can we think of that is good to get us through that? And I keep thinking about, say, your granddaughters, and so your goal is to see them be 18 and 20. Well, maybe another goal is that you're going to save $10 a week towards their wedding fund or, something like that. And so, what are the things, as you said, that kind of get us out of the thinking, oh my God, I have cancer, to what are the positives? And for some, maybe the goal is I'm going to walk a mile every day.
Yeah.
And I saw that that's one of the recent things that has been going around on Facebook is, let's do a mile a day. And for a lot of people, including me, that would be a lot.
Well, yeah, and I think what you're saying is do something productive and helpful to somebody else.
You're going to take cooking classes, maybe, all sorts of things, because it does get easy to sit and feel sorry for ourselves.
Well, I think something else we can do here is just say, okay, what brings me joy, or what have I felt joy in the past I may want to revisit? Because if you deal with cancer, it can be grim, as we'd like to say, turn the grim to grin. It can be pretty grim, but let's go to a place of joy, and that might be a thing that we can do, and then do something productive. I love your idea there about doing something for the people in life who are important. In fact, I've done some of that. I collect photographs and moments of my two grandchildren, and I have a place some files I've set aside that I plan when they both turn either 16 or 18. I haven't quite decided yet. I'm going to give them this
I love it.
Like a binder of all kinds of things that just kind of I've done with them particularly, or them. And so that's one of the things I have done that I thought about even before I had cancer, but I've been much more intentional about since I've had cancer. And I love that you thought of that. I think it's something else we can do here is just what you've already touched on here, is to pay more attention. When we're in the kind of the grind of life and, get the goals accomplished, sometimes we let things slip by. And I think if our intention, if our goal of intention is to pay attention, then we can enjoy life as it is even more so.
Right. And maybe it's that you see a flower blooming in the snow, right? As we're talking, you're where it's snowing like crazy. What if, or, you see a cardinal, that's one of the things that I know a lot of people say is when you see a cardinal, it means, it's an angel visiting you. Just all sorts of things like that. And, I tell people, if you have a bucket list, don't put it off. Why are you putting it off? And or people always have the, when we retire, we're going to do X type of things.
Yeah.
So why not do them now? I was talking to somebody and she said, well, her goal was that she would travel extensively around the world, but she was probably not going to be able to do that, just, for a variety of reasons. And I said, so why can't you go to local museums? Why can't you read books and things like that? And it had never occurred to her that maybe she could just shift her goal into something that was more doable.
I think that's an important point we can share with our audience is shift your perspective. it is true. If you have cancer, you may not be able to physically do some of the things you may one time thought you could do.
Or anybody. Maybe you just can't afford it. You can't, whatever.
And for any number of reasons, it could be a health, any number of reasons. But if you can shift your perspective based on your presence, your present presence. And I think that's a part of what I want to share is that when you think of goal setting, it's not just about a future orientation. It's about being really present right now and making the most of where you're at and enjoying your circumstances here. And acceptance, it's kind of an acceptance of your present circumstances. It's not a resignation. It's not giving up. That's not what we're talking about here. But it's kind of accepting that your present circumstances do make a difference. What do you think, Deb, are some practical helps we can give to our lifter-uppers who may be sharing our time here together? A couple practical applications that they can do in their life to set their intention here in this year.
I think one of the things you mentioned is to be intentional, and so write it down. Write down the good, write down the bad. And whether you're journaling, whether you're doing a gratitude journal, whatever it is, because if you were grateful for it, well, why the heck can't you do it again? And if it was something negative or bad, how can you make sure that doesn't happen again? Even if it's just something pretty simple, how can you try to make sure that doesn't happen again? So yeah, and then review those things. Maybe that's what you do every December. You go back through and you look at things. One of the things that I always, we didn't have kids, so I didn't do this, but I have a friend who they have the big jar, right? Something good happens, they write it down and they put it in the jar. And then they review that. And I love that idea. You'll look back and see what it was. And maybe it's something really simple. Maybe you won the lottery. Who knows? But yeah, be grateful for all of that and just kind of take the time to do that. And especially if maybe you're having a bad time, go back and go, what were good things?
And the jar thing can be basically a self-affirmation thing that, say it depends, we go with that poor me kind of a thing, or what's gone wrong. Maybe you can write down or just say what's gone right. And you don't have to have kids to do that. They could be on your own or with a spouse or with a friend or a small group or whatever, just to do what's right. The practical thing I would share with people to do is to understand they have choices. And I would categorize choices into the who and the how. And the who is, the choice. You always choose who you are in whatever circumstances.
Right.
You choose if you're going to be the person who people find to be always the complainer and the whiner, or the person who people enjoy being around because you are the person who adds some value in some form or another, or people enjoy being with. That's the who you are, and then the how is kind of how you interact with the world. How you engage with people. And if you're going to be a positive force, or if you're going to be kind of a drag on things. So the who and the how, I believe, and then those are some of the choices that we make, and I think it does revolve around choices, and I'm big on that. And choices based. If you have choices based on your value, on values that are helpful, that you're just gonna have more fun in life. No matter if you live, just like you said, Deb, no one has. We all have an expiration date, but we know what it is.
We don't get a free pass.
We literally don't know what it is, in the sense of, there are people who have had major diseases, and I've known people too who lived another many years, 30 plus years after they were supposed to have been dead. I knew one quick story. I knew a fellow in one of my churches who was wounded very badly in World War II, and he was almost killed and was shot a number of times in battle and was in a body cast for months, all about bad stuff. But he lived to be like 93 years old or something like that, and he was like 19 when he was almost killed. But my point is, you just never know. And then there's other situations that I think are important here to know that, there are people who, in my own community, there's a situation where someone was killed in a car accident here. It was a teenager. You just don't know. You just don't know. So have value in your life the way it is. So I think there's some good things to share here. And my encouragement to people is to embark on a new year with a sense of open-mindedness. What's the possibilities? What are the possibilities? Not what are the negatives, or not what are the things that push us down. And cancer can be one of those things that can push us down. But what are the possibilities? So I look forward to that. Are you looking forward to this year, Deb?
I am. I certainly am. And I think the other thing we need to remember is our caregivers' goals, right?
Yes.
And help them. And what are they thinking about?
Yeah. Thank you. All right, that sounds good. Well, let's encourage our lifter uppers to have a fantastic 2025, and let's move forward to help everybody transform whatever grim in their life to a grin here on Cancer and Comedy.